Just get a bunch of them.
here, okay?
Just record a bunch.
This is like
I am.
paid
It's like
acting.
20. It's like 20 seconds long. Keep going.
The 1920s, a time era full of ragtime and Charlie Chaplin, a simpler time. These were the years where Louis Armstrong rose to fame in the birthplace of jazz, and Babe Ruth came to New York to play for the Yankees. Technology improved, and with it was the spreading of pop culture as movies and radio became more prevalent in American culture. And of course, who could forget the world's most famous mouse? Hello, I'm John Furtado. I will be your tour guide as we travel through this fantastic era of long ago. Today we will be covering... Today we'll be talking about popular culture, along with many other forms of entertainment and media that were introduced during this time period. So join me as we talk about what I like to call, and what many others like to call, the Roaring Twenties. Our first stop is Harlem, New York. Every night this part of the city would light up and make way for some of the most famous and talented African Americans to date. Josephine Baker, Florence Mills, Bill Robinson, you name it. They all could be found here, listening to, dancing to, and of course, playing jazz. Of course, there were hundreds of these clubs found around, with one of the more notable being the Cotton Club, home to some of the most famous performers of the time era, such as Duke Ellington, who got his start after King Oliver canceled his booking and Ellington was suggested to play. Writers such as Langston Hughes, who wrote many poems about the lives of African Americans in the time period and helped shape the growing arts movement. Another author was Zora Neale Hurston. She wrote about social problems and how the white man were ill treating black women. She was a black rights political activist.
What happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore, and then run? Does it stink like rotten meat, or crust and sugar over like a syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode?
I remember sitting in the club, listening to music play. Shy young man in the corner with the drink. By the end of the night, I'd be up and dancing with a lady. It was the music, the women, the drinks.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's one you all can sing with us. When the Saints go marching in.
I remember listening to Louis Armstrong. What a man! Oh, God. The way he played the trumpet made me lose myself in the music. Today's music is nothing like this. It's all the same. Today's music is all the same. Back in my day, going to the club, you always get to hear something different.
Now when the Saints go marching in. Now when the Saints go marching in. Yes, I want to be in that number. When the Saints go marching in.
Not only was the 1920s home of the Harlem Renaissance, but it was also referred to as the Lost Generation. The Lost Generation was a post-World War I era, where many American citizens had lost hope and sense of meaning in the fate of the country, shattering the very moral values of society. Of course, this group was definitely not as upbeat as those enjoying music and dancing over in New York, but rather consisted of many writers who traveled to the city of Paris, sparking several ideas for what would become literary works of art. Many of them trying to escape an increasingly materialistic America, where all people cared about were businesses and money. Of course, one writer of the time was F. Scott Fitzgerald, who would make a statement about these ideals in one of his most famous books, The Great Gatsby. More specifically, it focused on prohibition and how, even though it was put into act, most Americans simply did not care.
Oh, I love the
Great Gatsby. Now, of course, the whole book did not revolve around prohibition, but it certainly wasn't ignored. It was a story filled with characters who struck emotion into the heart of every reader. There was romance and a little bit of violence, and of course, many scandalous scenes. However, it was the characters that were the real statement about society, not the story itself. They were all wealthy East Coasters who had nothing else to do but party. And what's a party without alcohol? Surely I can relate. I won't lie, it may have been illegal at the time, but every night we went out drinking up a storm.
Of course, writing wasn't the only source of entertainment at the time. The 1920s also featured the rise of many movies and cartoons that were fairly new at the time. Far before talking pictures were invented, over 40 million people would go to the movies by 1922 and crowd into a theater just to see a silent flick. Talkies weren't introduced until 1927, and even then until 1929, movies that came out had duplicates made, a talking version and a silent version for those theaters that weren't up to the technological capability at the time. By 1930, over 100 million people per year were cramming into theaters to hop onto the latest craze.
Who are my favorite actors? Let's see, there was Douglas Fairbank, John Barrymore, Ronald Colman, all typical male actors at the time, and boy, were they knockouts. They could woo any girl in whatever movie they were in, and the ladies loved them. But of course there was also Rudolph Valentino. Let's just say Rudolph was a little more delicate than most of the actors, to the point where he even earned the nickname Pink Powder Puff.
Rudolph Valentino was one of the more popular silent film stars in Hollywood, along with another being Clara Bow, who went on to epitomize the very idea of a flapper. They were known for their bobbed hair, dancing, and were most famous for their ability to express the restlessness of youth. One of the most famous actors at the time was Charlie Chaplin, who went on to become one of the most famous figures of the film industry with his comedic talents. Of course, not all stars at the time were human, so to speak. Mickey Mouse got his career in 1928 with the release of the famous Steamboat Willie. The first cartoon to feature its own soundtrack that was synchronized with the images on the screen itself. These cartoons, as we know, would grow to become those that we know and love today. Of course, some were more popular than others. Those seeking a different form of entertainment, but didn't care enough to watch movies or go watch cartoons, would rely on spectators' reports, listening to the radio to hear what was going on if they weren't there themselves.
Here's Kyle O'Hearn playing for the O'Hearn team. And he throws the ball, and Kyle catches it, and he's off. He's at the 30, he's at the 20, he's at the 10, and touchdown! It looks to be a beautiful day here at the Lincoln Stadium. Everyone's getting ready for the big game. And Kieran Dagger is stepping up to bat. He's getting himself ready over here. Practicing his swing. Now here's pitcher Zachary Heineman getting ready to throw. There we go. And can it be? Kieran Thacker hits a home run. Zachary Heineman is not too happy. Oh, and he's off. Zach can do nothing but sit back and watch. And he's heading to second base. And third. Poor Zach. And that's a home run, everyone. That's 1 point for Lincoln. I used to announce for almost every major sports event. Baseball, football, boxing, and sometimes swimming. One of the major highlights of my career was the baseball game where Babe Ruth hit the first home run of Yankee Stadium on the field's opening day. It was a crazy day. The whole stadium was roaring. Everyone across the country was jumping out of their seats and dancing around celebrating. Another major sporting event I announced was the fight of September 23rd, 1926, where the 7-year champion Jack Dempsey was finally defeated by Gene Tunney. No one thought it could be done. But when it happened, it was a shock across America. People were amazed that the 7-year champion was defeated.
The end of the fight. Tunney, the winner by unanimous decision.
Sports began to rise in America, for it was fun to watch and play. In this time period, one sport prominently became America's favorite pastime, baseball. Babe Ruth became one of the most famous baseball players of the time. He was loved by sports fans in all of America. Unlike many athletes, he was not arrogant and thought of himself better than anyone else. He just went out and enjoyed playing the game.
He took a vicious swing at the third pitch ball, and the bat connected with a crash that was audible in all parts of the stand.
Also during the 1920s, there was a rise in other sports such as football, boxing, and swimming. Due to the invention of radio, everyone in America could be a part of the action just by listening in their homes. Of course, radio wasn't just for sports.
This is KDKA of the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company in East Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We shall now broadcast the election returns. We are receiving these returns through the cooperation and by special arrangements with the Pittsburgh Post and Sun. We'd appreciate it if anyone hearing this broadcast would communicate with us, as we are very anxious to know how far the broadcast is reaching and how it is being received. While we're waiting for the returns to come in over the telephone, direct from the Post and Sun, I'll give you the list of offices in today's presidential election. Here they are. Some 30 million Americans are electing a president of the United States, a vice president, 34 United States senators, 435 members of the House of Representatives, governors of 34 states, and thousands of minor offices, county judges, and officials. Okay, those are the offices to be filled. And here are the 7 complete presidential tickets that are being voted on. Republican, Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge. Democratic, James M. Cox.
Well, that about does it. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Honors U.S. History channel today to watch our documentary about the 1920s. Hopefully you learned something and maybe had a little fun while we're at it, but thank you.